the big mobility industry buzzwords, connectivity, electrification, autonomous driving, rely on one thing, software. So what does this mean for the industry, and what is it going to take to make over-the-air updates reach their full potential? That's what we're talking about on this episode of the IAA Mobility Visionary Club. Welcome. I'm happy to have a great panel of experts joining me for this deep dive on software and connectivity. Welcome, guys. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves, and when you do, tell me what you think the biggest challenge with automotive software will be in the years to come. Let's say the next decade. Anil, why don't you start?
Okay. Hi, this is Anil Hariharakrishnan, Director of Product Engineering, In-Cabin Experiences at Harman Automotive. I think the biggest challenge is that two disruptions are happening at the same time. One is building quality software for automotive at the speed of consumer demand. And the second thing is automotive software supply chain is being disrupted in the next 10 years. That's going to be the biggest challenge.
All right, we like talking about disruption here. Thank you very much, Anil. Oliver, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Oliver Schwager from BCG Platinum, the brand for technology and digital within the Boston Consulting Group. I think the biggest challenge looking forward will be, maybe let me play on Alan Kay that once said, who loves or who's serious about software should build their own hardware. Maybe the opposite is the case, and it will be very important to really think about what are the right partners, what is the right setup to do so.
Challenging words. I like it. Okay, thank you, Oliver. Welcome. It's good to have you. And finally, Philip, introduce yourself, and where do you see the big challenge in the next 10 years?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Philip Timmen. I'm leading the partnership activities in Munich out of Munich for Europe for Zinc. Where I think the biggest challenge is that, let's be honest, automotive software right now is not really sexy, and we need to find a more consumer software-driven approach in order to change that in the car, and also find the right business model for the automakers to participate in that and not just stand on the sideline.
All right, make software sexy. I like it. Philip, it's good to have you. Guys, let's dive right in. What are the biggest investment themes that you see for automotive software? And I'm thinking here, advanced driving, powertrain performance, but also user experience. Oliver?
Yeah, this is a good one, right? And it feels a bit like crystal ball, where to invest. And I would answer it differently in a sense that I think in the past it was really strategic bets on, hey, we have to be in autonomous and we have to invest there. In the future, it's more about, okay, where do we get value out of it, right? What is relevant for the customer, and where's their willingness to pay and buy, right? And I think there will be a change where we then also see a more dynamic reallocation of budgets there, and also parts of the things that were in the past very large investment buckets will move to suppliers and become commodity, right? So we will have a very volatile environment here, I guess.
Okay, let's talk about the user experience here for a second. For OEMs, there are two basic approaches, right? It's build and operate your own vehicle-centric ecosystem, or you simply integrate the user's smartphone and all of its applications. What's your preferred approach, and why do you think it's going to prevail in the future?
For me, it's very simple. It's very clearly that as much as you can should be operated directly in the car. Already from a business point perspective, it makes sense for automakers to switch more onto enabling digital business models themselves, and for that they need to get access to the user, they need to get access to data, they need to get access to the services in their car, and use the car also to capture the time that people spend in the car.
Yeah, and tapping on to that, so this is what we also believe. We did a detailed study and we said that the car is going to become a third living space. And the third living space should come first, second, and then third. So there needs to be a connectivity, a continuity from the first living space to the second living space to the third living space. And this cannot happen if consumer-aware design comes into automotive software.
Yeah, I think one thing we should keep in mind, I think there's no back and forth switching between the different worlds, if it's a smartphone world or in the in-cabin.
Yeah, and people don't want this back and forth, right?
And if they switch to the smartphone experience, they will stay forever there, right? What happens as we speak, people that are in CarPlay. And whatever happens on the smartphone itself is just not addressable anymore for the OEM. So all the revenue pools that are hidden in the smartphones are gone. Right?
Is it too late? Have they already missed the boat?
I guess not. But they need to think smart on how they do it, and they really have to think about, like you said, how you connect this world to have this continuity.
And it's not only smartphone. It's now wearables, it's gadgets, it's other things, other electronic things, up to implants, what people carry into them. So I would rephrase smartphones to bring your own device into the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me maybe add on that. I think people quite commonly really bash on the phone in the car and say they put everything in the car directly. I mean, it's still the phone, right? It's still your most personal device that you have and that you use every day. It doesn't mean that we want to all abandon it entirely. It's just we changed its purpose, so it should not be the primary device, but something that you use for controlling what's happening in the car. Maybe you can use steering, but for really selected use cases. Maybe it's more for having a remote in your hand to steer certain things that are happening in front of you, but rather having the entire experience run directly through your phone, which is also not the best idea for safety reasons.
Okay.
And probably just to add on one thing, we know data is money, right?
Yeah.
And all of this value, what Oliver mentioned, is going to come through data. Yeah. And the tussle of who is owning this data is not going to go away.
Yeah.
So let's be honest that these worlds will exist, but we have to all work together that these worlds become seamless.
Certainly the user wants a seamless experience, but what capabilities are required to make that happen concretely here?
The very first capability is that the automotive industry has to think consumer-wise. So largely, this is, I think, also what Philip was mentioning, that cars in the past have been built by engineers, right? You show off your car. The biggest engineering marvel is a car. But now we are moving into an era driven because of the mobility revolution and the mobile revolution, that it needs to be a designed car more than an engineered car. So we need engineers who think like designers as well. And this, I believe, is the concrete need of the hour in order to really address the demand that we deliver quality automotive software that the consumer wants and not what the automotive industry wants to push.
Yes, so it's a cultural question in the end, right? So, I mean, consumer software is always about finding the next big thing, developing it fast, being agile, short cycles, bring it fast. I mean, what's the lead time for a car? It's a lot of years, right?
Yeah.
Like it takes so much time to bring
and this is a good one. And we should not forget that this is a total change of paradigm that we see here, right? In the past, it was like car produced, story over, right?
Yeah,
and now everything happens in the ownership phase, right? And this requires totally different capabilities. You have to be able to scout for such an ecosystem, scout the right partners, and also rely on them. It's not like suppliers and just telling them what to do, but they need also to co-invest into innovation, also taking a share of the revenue then, to be fair, right? Exactly. But you as an OEM need to be able to be a good curator on this platform because it's your reputation at risk, right? And this was not required in the past.
And because of the experience that we're talking about, this cannot just stop at the OEM because OEM defining what has to happen takes this 3 years, 4 years that we currently see. And this is why the entire disruption of the supply chain I mentioned, the entire supply chain would need to think like an OEM, would need to think like, what is the consumer? Even if they don't deliver, it's not their, meaning they are pocketing the money at some point in time, but they need to deliver, think like, okay, this is what the OEM's consumer actually needs, even if you are in a B2B business.
Yeah, I don't 100% agree with it. I think it goes into the right direction, but for me, the perspective is a little bit different because I think I want to distance myself a little bit from this classic supplier-automotive relationship, right? Where you deliver everything to the automaker and then you wonder, oh, what's the customer of the automaker going to do? What will the automaker think? I don't think this is adequate for the time anymore that we're living in. Because you should deliver a service that is great for the customer no matter what the automaker is, no matter what the brand is, and just convince someone who's actually using that. And also for that, the automaker doesn't need to own everything of the ecosystem. And you can provide in the car a service directly to the user.
And they will not have the capability to do so, right? They cannot do everything at once, right? So they need to invest in these long-term partnerships and also enable their new partners on having a good envelope to build their business, right? And really to co-invest in terms of really bringing money in. Yeah?
And probably to close that point, since I come from earlier mobile space, this is what happened in the mobiles. So an iPhone as an iPhone or an Android phone as an Android phone itself is 60% value, but the huge amount of apps which come because of the ecosystem that an iPhone or an Android phone created, I agree to that point. So that space needs to be now created. I think it's a good point.
I think it's a fair point. It's also a fair point that, like, look, you can't do everything, right? How do you decide? Well, what are people willing to pay for ultimately? What do we know? Which connected features do users want? What's the most important?
I think it's, sorry, I might just take that one. For me, it's not really the question about what is the feature, but how you are delivering it. Right? You already see it right now in cars, or maybe start first. You see it everywhere in the discussion. People are willing to take up the discussion, bring new features in cars, be it things that run on your smart TV and entertainment, be it about productivity, about something completely else. This discussion is already happening, and it's just a matter of time until all these things will be available in the car. The deciding factor is, how will it be delivered? Will it be purpose-built for the car, or will it deploy something that was just not made for it? Because then you end up with a bad experience, and then apps crash down, then you have a slow loading time, and then people will actually not use it. This is also where you then really differentiate from having a more premium solution to having like a just entry market solution that people don't really fall for, and then don't use it at all. So I think getting this right, making sure the performance is in place, that's a critical factor in order to drive usage of different features in the car. Because if you don't get that right, nobody will ever use it.
Yeah. Agreed?
I will go. No. Yeah, I will even not use the word features. Frankly, I would use the word experiences, because this is finally what the consumer will pay for. And we've done a study, and we've seen that it's not that consumers don't want to pay for it, just that the consumers today don't see what experience and value they will gain out of it. And we've seen that if this experience and value is clear, consumers are ready to pay for it.
Can you give us an example of something? Like, what are we talking about here?
So I'll give you an example of a study that we did in the past 3 years. We studied if the car can be treated as a sanctuary. So can you bring more health and wellness into the car? A lot of OEMs are doing it. And the initial thing would be, who wants it, right? A car is a transportation device taking me from A to B, that's it, right? But we saw that so many pain points with regards to stress, with regards to how drowsiness is handled today, fatigue is handled today, for such a device, such a sophisticated device, is not handled. So when we propose a solution, an experience which could mitigate some of these pain points, consumers are saying, wow, I would like to see this.
I disagree to some extent where we are right now in terms of maturity levels, right? Because I think, I mean, we are in 2022 and we still talk about connected services for what sounds like 10 years ago, right? I think it's removing the frictions that we all have with the vehicles, right? So, for instance, connected charging. Why do I still need these credit cards to activate everything? I mean, we are moving there, but it's really the basics. If I want to listen to my favorite tunes in the vehicle, it's still not the best experience accessing Spotify or if the app is there at all, right? So fixing the basics first should be something that needs to be done in the next 2 years, right? Otherwise, it's lost to the phone industry. And then the next generation will then be more immersive, like you suggested, right? Where we have this vital sensing, we have eye tracking, gaze detection, what have you, and you can build on top then new use cases. Or if you're in an autonomous cabin, we have players like HoloRide and Code that bring in completely new experiences that are hyper-tailored to the actual user sitting in the front or in the back.
Agree. This is where probably
please.
You can push so much technology into the car, but compared to a mobile phone or any other high-tech device, the car is going to have an important question, which is the trust question. Is the person now sitting in front of this technology trusting you or not? And I think this is what you refer to as friction. Unless this is solved, and this is not solved today, and unless this is solved, I think consumer acceptance is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and what I wanted to add is that it doesn't have to be always that black and white, that this is then always good or bad, or this is a crazy use case, or this is more. I think we will start very gradually in terms of what we do in the car and also what these features will be, right? And for example, Volkswagen said they maybe want to price autonomous driving features at €7 per hour. I think this is already a statement that's a little bit down the road already by now. But still, this will be a feature that still takes some years to come there. Yeah, but then on the other side, BMW is already talking about bringing the seat heating on demand in the car.
What is a bit funny, right?
It was a bit funny and didn't really get the best reputation, but nevertheless, it's the right step to do, right? To actively bring this feature on demand topic more on the radar of the people, trigger discussions about it. But there's lots simpler things like video streaming in the car. You mentioned the charging point, like making this frictionless. And all these things, they actually start today. And if we find the user acceptance for that, then it's also easier to build it up for the future.
So overall, can we agree we have to educate the users to pay for it, right? So it's nothing that will happen over time, and it will not be just a copycat from smartphones.
Why don't we show the value to the users, right? Users, do you think we really need to educate users? I think we need to show the value to the users. The value-based thinking or the consumer experience-based thinking has to come in our automotive language. That is what is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Guys, there's so much to talk about on this topic, so I'm really glad we have a second part, but I want to prepare you. I am going to be asking some more challenging questions. You've all had your say. Now it's time to break out the tough questions and a challenger. Please join us for part 2 of our discussion on software and connectivity. That's coming right up. I'll see you there.